Welcome to the Seeds of Wisdom Team channel dedicated to education, sharing wisdom of RV GCR news to projects and current news. The U.S. Constitution. It's been around for a while now, since 1788 to be exact, and you know what? It's changed a bit since then. It's had to. The Founding Fathers, as brilliant as they were, couldn't predict everything. They didn't foresee self-driving cars or the internet, and they definitely didn't see eye to eye on slavery. This essay dives into three major periods of constitutional evolution. First, we'll look at the pre-Civil War era, where the big question was how much power the federal government should have. Then we'll examine the tumultuous Civil War period, where Lincoln had to make some tough calls to hold the nation together. Finally, we'll explore the last 160 years, a period marked by civil rights struggles, economic shifts, and evolving social norms. Buckle up, folks. We're about to embark on a wild ride through American history, where the Constitution takes center stage. It's a story of power struggles, moral reckonings, and the constant push and pull of a nation trying to live up to its ideals. Picture it, America, 1787. The revolution is won, but the real work is just beginning. The Founding Fathers, gathered in Philadelphia, had a tough task: create a government strong enough to hold the nation together, but not so strong that it mirrored the tyranny they just escaped. Thus, the Constitution was born. This document, barely longer than your average grocery list, laid the groundwork for a delicate balance of power between the federal government and the individual states. The states, wary of centralized authority, retained significant autonomy. The federal government, meanwhile, was granted specific enumerated powers. Compromise was the name of the game. Take the issue of representation. Big states wanted it based on population. Small states, fearing being bullied, demanded equal footing. The result? The Great Compromise, creating a bicameral legislature with the Senate, equal representation, and the House of Representatives, population-based. But one issue loomed large, threatening to unravel the young nation's slavery. It was a moral stain on the very fabric of the Constitution. A compromise for unity that would have devastating consequences. More on that later. Slavery. The elephant in the room, or rather the shackled human being forced to build the room. The Constitution, in its attempt to appease Southern states, made some truly awful compromises. The most egregious, the 3/5 compromise, counting each enslaved person as 3/5 of a person for representation in Congress. This gave Southern states disproportionate power, allowing them to block anti-slavery legislation and perpetuate the horrific institution. The Constitution also included a fugitive slave clause, forcing free states to return escaped slaves to their enslavers. As America expanded westward, the question of slavery in new territories ignited tensions. Abolitionists argued for its containment, while pro-slavery advocates fought for its expansion. The nation was a powder keg, and the fuse was lit. The Supreme Court, in the infamous Dred Scott decision, ruled that black people, free or enslaved, were not citizens and had no standing to sue in federal court. This decision further deepened the divide, pushing the nation closer to the brink of war. And then it happened. The Civil War erupted, tearing the nation apart. President Abraham Lincoln, faced with an existential threat, took unprecedented actions. He suspended habeas corpus, allowing for the indefinite detention of suspected Confederate sympathizers. He expanded the Army beyond constitutionally mandated limits. These actions, while controversial, were, in Lincoln's view, necessary to preserve the Union. He argued that the Constitution wasn't a suicide pact, that it gave him the power to act decisively in times of national crisis. In 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring enslaved people in Confederate territories to be free. This was a watershed moment, shifting the war's focus from preserving the Union to dismantling slavery itself. Lincoln's actions, while rooted in his interpretation of the Constitution, sparked debate about the limits of executive power. It highlighted the inherent tension between individual liberty and national security, a debate that continues to this day. Section 5, the Reconstruction Amendments, a new birth of freedom, ideally. The Civil War may have ended slavery, but the fight for equality was far from over. Enter the Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th, fundamentally altering the relationship between the federal government and its citizens. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, finally eradicating it from American soil. The 14th Amendment granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved people, and guaranteed equal protection under the law. And the 15th Amendment? It prohibited denying the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. These amendments aim to create a more just and equitable society, but the road to realizing their promise would be long and arduous. Section 6, the long shadow of Jim Crow, separate but definitely not equal. Sadly, the promise of Reconstruction was betrayed. Southern states resistant to racial equality implemented Jim Crow laws enforcing segregation in all aspects of life. These laws, while claiming to be separate but equal, were anything but. Black Americans faced discrimination in education, housing, employment, and public accommodations. They were denied their fundamental rights, their voices silenced by violence and intimidation. The Supreme Court, in the landmark case Plessy v. Ferguson, 1896, upheld the constitutionality of separate but equal facilities. This decision, a gross misinterpretation of the 14th Amendment, solidified segregation as the law of the land. It would take decades of struggle and sacrifice to dismantle the Jim Crow system and finally fulfill the promise of equal citizenship. Section 7. The feds flex their muscles. From the New Deal to the Great Society. The 20th century witnessed a significant expansion of federal power driven by events like the Great Depression and the Civil Rights Movement. The New Deal, a series of programs and reforms enacted by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, fundamentally reshaped the role of government in American life. The federal government took on a more active role in regulating the economy, providing social welfare programs, and addressing issues like unemployment and poverty. This expansion of federal power was met with resistance by those who believed it violated states' rights and individual liberty. However, the Supreme Court, interpreting the Constitution in light of changing societal needs, generally upheld New Deal legislation, recognizing the federal government's responsibility to address national crises. The Civil Rights Movement further propelled the federal government to address racial injustice. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, landmark legislation outlawing discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, were passed during this era. Section 8. The Civil Rights Revolution, taking the Constitution to the streets. The Civil Rights Movement wasn't just about legislation, it was about people. Brave men and women, black and white, risked their lives and livelihoods to challenge segregation and demand equal rights. They marched, they sat in, they voted, and they refused to be silenced. These activists, armed with the Constitution and a deep well of moral conviction, exposed the hypocrisy of a nation that claimed to be a beacon of freedom while denying basic rights to millions of its citizens. They forced America to confront its original sin of slavery and its ongoing legacy of racism. The Civil Rights Movement led to a more expansive interpretation of the 14th Amendment, striking down discriminatory laws and practices. It paved the way for future movements for equality, from LGBTQ+ rights to disability rights, demonstrating the transformative power of constitutional activism. Section 9. Modern constitutional battles, from voting rights to privacy in the digital age. The evolution of the Constitution didn't stop with the Civil Rights Movement. Today, new challenges and technologies raise fresh constitutional questions. The right to privacy, for example, takes on new urgency in the digital age, with issues like government surveillance and data collection at the forefront. The Second Amendment, initially intended to ensure the readiness of state militias, is now at the center of a heated debate over gun control. The balance between national security and individual liberty, always a delicate dance, is further complicated by the threat of terrorism. Voting rights, hard-won and constantly under attack, remain a contentious issue, with debates over voter ID laws and gerrymandering shaping the political landscape. The Constitution, once a static document, is constantly being reinterpreted and reapplied to modern challenges. Section 10. The Constitution today, still relevant, still debated. Over 230 years later, the U.S. Constitution remains a living document. It's the bedrock of American democracy, a testament to the enduring power of ideas like liberty, justice, and equality. But it's also a work in progress, a document that continues to be shaped by social movements, political debates, and judicial interpretations. The Constitution's legacy is one of both progress and struggle. It's a story of expanding rights and enduring inequalities, of triumphs and setbacks. It's a reminder that freedom is a constant fight, a fight that requires vigilance, participation, and a willingness to hold our leaders accountable. So the next time you encounter a debate about the Constitution, remember its history. Remember the struggles and sacrifices that have shaped its meaning. And remember that its future and the future of American democracy is in our hands. Section 11, Conclusion, the U.S. Constitution, a work in progress. The U.S. Constitution isn't some dusty old relic locked away in a museum. It's a living, breathing document that continues to evolve with us. From its shaky beginnings to its role in abolishing slavery and advancing civil rights, the Constitution has been through a lot. It's seen its fair share of challenges, from bitter partisan divides to technological advancements that the Founding Fathers couldn't have even imagined. And you know what? It's still standing. It's a testament to the power of compromise, the importance of debate, and the enduring belief in the idea of a more perfect union. The Constitution's journey is far from over. It's up to each generation to grapple with its meaning, to fight for its ideals, and to ensure that it continues to serve as a beacon of hope and a roadmap for a more just and equitable future. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you found it insightful, please like the video if you haven't already. Also, be sure to visit seedsofwisdomteam.com to sign up for our newsletters.